Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the OPP's AMA, which stands for Ask Me Anything. We are broadcasting live from General Headquarters, the mothership of the OPP, situated in the beautiful city of Orillia, the Sunshine City. Our building's actually built on ancestral lands of the Chippewas of Rama, and this area is really steeped in a lot of history. If you've never been, take a little drive. Come down to see us. Beautiful place. We have a great museum also. I'm really excited today to welcome our guest, Dr. Vivian Lee, who is with the Healthy Workplace team. Dr. Lee, welcome. Can you tell us your official title? And I'm not giving you justice here.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm the Chief Psychologist for the OPP, and I'm the Bureau Commander for our Healthy Workplace team.
Well, that's awesome. Now, are you located in GHQ? Is that office in here? Are you a deployed?
We have the core staff across the street from GHQ, so their number of red cottages were also the academy as well. But our team is deployed across the province in all the different regions.
That's good. Speaking of different regions, I'm going to give you a shout out from Sergeant Dan Mills up in Thunder Bay, Northwest region. He wanted to send his greetings, had tons of great things to say about you. So I'm officially passing on the greeting from Sergeant Mills.
Thanks so much. Hi, Dan.
Um, it's great. I'm really excited that we get to have this conversation. Healthy workplace, mental health. These are topics that are becoming more and more on the forefront. And when I do information sessions, I often share that when I started with the OPP in '94, those were things we didn't really talk about. And I'm really proud that the OPP leads the way on so many fronts. We've taken the steps. Our association's been involved, and that's what we want to find out about today. Can you tell me, in general, and you imagine even a lot of officers still don't realize everything that's available to them. Can you maybe break it down for us? What do we have? What does all this mean?
Oh boy. Okay. So we actually have a lot of choice these days, which was not the case not that long ago. So the Healthy Workplace team is for members and family members. So it includes when you become a member of the OPP, we're also there for your families. We're also there for retired members and auxiliary officers. So we have a number of mental health and physical health resources. So we have mental health clinicians, we have care navigators who are basically what it sounds like, people who help you kind of navigate through the different supports if you're not quite sure where to start. We have our physiological health sciences coordinator. So Tara has a wonderful background in physiological health and oversees the fitness and first aid, etc. We have fitness wellness liaisons. So together they have recently developed a certified fitness coaching program because they're wonderful, but there's only a couple of them right now, so they can't they obviously can't be all over the province. So they've been working with members in the different regions, so those members can then eventually go and help people with that fitness and nutrition.
That's
Um,
amazing. Just even there, one thing you said, the family members. I think a lot of people don't know that or realize that you don't just support the person in the family that becomes a police officer, but the whole family is covered here.
it really does. I mean, it's a calling, right? And it becomes an identity. And when someone joins the police service, they're really becoming a police family. So before I came here, I was involved with Toronto Beyond the Blue, which is it's a charity that supports families of Toronto Police Service members, because people who work in emergency response, they see and experience things that are, can be a little difficult at times, but they don't want to take it home and feel like they're burdening their family, so they keep it in. But of course, the families at home are worried about their health and safety, and no one's talking about it. I've been amazed when I've talked to very very long time officers who've been struggling for some time, and they say they've never talked to their family about it. So it really is about the family rather than just the individual, because that's their main support.
That is amazing. And I've been a police officer for over 29 years now. And yeah, there's times when you don't want to talk. And I'm blessed. My lovely wife is also a police officer. So we have an ease with discussing things. But for some other people who maybe some of their family members, their spouse or their partner, significant other knows nothing about this, it could be catch you off guard when all of a sudden someone's really quiet at home, or They're usually fun and laughing, but today they're just not. And like you said, the officer is thinking, I don't want to burden or bring this home. So let's say the significant partner, the other person, could they just pick up the phone and call and get help?
Yeah, absolutely. So any of the members or their families can contact the Healthy Workplace team directly, right? So you don't have to go through the OPP member. So it could be looking for resources for themselves or their families, etc. Yeah, we're certainly open to everyone. And I haven't even touched yet on Encompass, which is the OPP Association's program as well. And they, of course, are available to members' families as well.
That's one of the topics I'm going to bring up a little bit later. So I'm glad that you're thinking along the same lines. It's amazing in this short little time, the amount of information and how much we can expand on that. You were talking about a fitness guide, even. Tell me a bit more about what does that mean?
Well, in terms of fitness, so all the new recruits, they get to know our fitness folks because they're doing the PT, they're doing the training with the recruits at least a few mornings a week, starting at 5:30. So they're down and dirty with everyone going through it. And they are a wonderful resource. But again, they can't obviously support everyone in the organization individually. So this is why they've spent quite a bit of time and evidence based developing this training, right? Not just fitness, but also nutrition as well, because we know what you fuel your body with can make a huge difference in your performance. So eventually, the goal is that throughout the different regions and bureaus, that there will be also certified fitness coaches. And we've had for a long time fitness appraisers who do wonderful work, who work with members who want their annual fit pin. But yeah, we're expanding beyond that so that people can help coach people through rather than the once a year testing.
What a great resource. And I'm glad you bring up fitness. I've always been a firm believer that mental health and physical health are linked somehow. They go hand in hand. Healthy body, healthy mind. I'm a proud recipient. I always get my fitness pin every year, and I encourage people. And one of the key things that I say is this job will not make you fit. There's a lot of sitting down. You're sitting in a car, you're sitting at an office. So fitness needs to be a personal commitment, something that you take on. So having this guide, and officers are taught that at a young time. But I imagine, again, the families who, let's say, who want to get involved that way. Okay, fitness is going to be part of our life, can access these same resources. And
Absolutely. I mean, we're still building, so it is it's still somewhat limited capacity at this time for families. But certainly, if a family member reaches out to us, we do what we can to help them with resources.
And another thing you said about that was the nutrition. Such an important thing that, I don't, when I was young on the job, nobody talked about that. Because you think, what's open at night when we're at work at fast food places, a lot of places that are handy and quick to get some food, but not always the best quality or the healthiest food if you're trying to stay fit. So I'm glad that you're instructing people.
Mhm.
I know in my career and different roles I've had, I'd always carry a lunch because I figured if I brought food with me, I'm going to eat good stuff as opposed to going to get something in the middle of the night that maybe is not the best thing for me.
I love when I see officers coming into work and they're rolling in this little cooler because they're ready with all the healthier foods to eat throughout their shift.
Yeah, and I'm glad that this starts right at the academy, that this is taught and brought up. I think that's a great. Our academy is awesome. When I see our academy staff and the quality of people that they put through there, I'm very proud of the OPP Academy, and I love to hear that we're current. This is the kind of stuff that a lot of people still don't talk about, but we teach it right from the get-go. Hey, you're embarking on a journey. Your whole family's on this journey with you, and there's a lot of angles to this. Let's get you set up for success right at the start, not down the road, but let's start you on the right foot.
It's so much easier to start. It's not easy, but it's so much easier to start out and build those healthier habits and communication in the beginning. I mean, hopefully, most people are here for 30 something years, right? And so it's a marathon, right? Everyone wants to start on the sprint because it's exciting and it's new, but you have to you can't maintain a 30-year career if you're not keeping yourself healthy, both physically and mentally.
Absolutely. I've been asked several times. I'm retiring this fall, and people have asked me like, "Hey, how did you keep going? What was your secret? Is there a secret?" And one of the key things I always said was fitness and nutrition. staying healthy, keeping yourself healthy physically, mentally, is all part of it. Now, just to go back on when you're talking about these resources are available to every family also. I know you probably can't share specifics, but would you say that, half of the people that use these resources are officers, the other half are families? Is there a balance? Is there a trend that you're seeing? Is it mostly officers, or are the families taking advantage of this?
Certainly families are. I would say, I don't have the hard stats in front of me. I would say it is majority officers still at this point. And a big reason for that is, I mean, we are a relatively new bureau, so we were only stood up a few years ago. But it's also been difficult to get the word out to families, right? So, and we started during COVID. So to try to get the word out, it's been a little difficult. But I know we've been working with our corporate communications, for example, to develop resources to try to get the word out. So I know a couple months ago, a family wellness resource guide was developed, and it's being handed out now at the graduation ceremonies for new recruits, where the families are attending, so they can see it for themselves. The plan is to put it on the website and hopefully blast it out on social media. But yes, as families get to hear more about us, then they are reaching out. That's been a bit of a gap so far, though.
Well, we're all getting caught up after COVID. Although there was some good progress, we learned how to do this kind of stuff. We learned to use technology better, use it more efficiently. But definitely, it's backlogged us in certain ways. Everything we're talking about for our viewers, if you're interested in looking up, opp.ca is our website. And at opp.ca is where you'll find information to apply, information that we're talking about. There's all kinds of links with fitness guides, different. Please take the time to navigate our website. You also find our social media handles on our website. So if you don't follow us on social media, I'd encourage you to follow us. A lot of these neat things that we do, whether it's a podcast with Sergeant Mills or these AMAs or advertising, we get amazing information like this discussion we're having with Dr. Lee. So if you joined us late, we've got Dr. Vivian Lee, wealth of information, and the topic is mental health, something that we don't talk enough about, but we're certainly gaining ground and talking about and getting more comfortable around it. I think for a long time there was this health. Why is that? Why is it that we still feel sometimes like I shouldn't mention anything or I don't want to be that person?
Well, obviously there's been a lot of stigma and there's been a lot of misunderstanding because no one wants to be seen as crazy, right? In general, it's only I think in more recent years or maybe the last couple of decades where people have been more open, and I don't mean just in policing, I just mean in society in general. Helping people understand it's not that someone is weak and they just can't handle it, right? There's all these physiological and emotional impacts that can happen. Um, and there can be a genetic component to some areas. So I think as people are understanding more about it, they haven't really understood what it can look like. Because most of the time, I think in the past, because we didn't really talk about it, we'd see someone with maybe more extreme issues out on the street, and we think, well, that person clearly has issues. I'm not like that person, and we would tend to think of the extreme, and we couldn't relate to that. So I think as science has helped us understand a bit more about what is happening, physiologically and emotionally, as well as people just sharing their experiences, because we're all human, right? We can handle a lot. We're born resilient, but there's a lot of things that can eventually take its toll if we're not aware of what's happening.
Absolutely. I've often mentioned that we're only human. And sometimes people forget that police officers are human too. We cry, we get sad, we do groceries, we pay bills. We're just everyday people. And life can be tough on its own when you think of everything that we went through with COVID, some of the challenges that people had to face, some of the hardships that they had to endure to get through a tough period. Now you throw on top of that some of the extra stressors that come with emergency services, like policing. And I often say you're going to see stuff that most people only see on TV or in the movies, but it's going to be real. You'll be the officer at the scene and you will be linked in someone's life by fate and where they're going through the worst day of their life, a tragedy, and you're the officer at the scene and you are now part of that moment. And you can't undo that. And that there's a reaction to that. Like we're only human.
Absolutely. I mean, it's policing in
Those
emergency. Oh, sorry. I think one of us
No,
froze
no,
for a
go ahead.
second. Oh, I was just going to say, I think in emergency responses, I mean, people are obviously supposed to call 911 for something, an emergency, something bad that has happened or, is about to happen. So people who are responding on the front lines, they see some of the worst of what can happen to humans, right? And they might see more in a 12-hour shift than hopefully most of us might see, for many, many years. So they're exposed to this. Now, of course, the flip side is that they can help people who, have been in very vulnerable situations, and that's quite meaningful, right? But of course, you're going to be exposed to things that could potentially impact you. Because again, we're human. We all have a certain point where it can be a little too much. You take something simple, like if you say, "Hey, Vivian, can you hold this ball in your hand out like this and just keep holding it?" And it's like a 2-pound ball. It's no big deal. It doesn't seem to impact me, but the longer I hold it without a break, it's going to eventually hurt, and I won't be able to hold it that much longer. So we can hit that point again if we're not aware of taking care of ourselves. Okay, I'm not sure if I am frozen or Sergeant Hick is frozen.
Hello, we're back. I want to apologize about that. Sorry, Dr. Lee. Sorry to all our viewers. I was talking about how technology has brought us forward. Technology sometimes breaks down, and somehow our internet had a little bleep, and that's what happens. So I'm so glad that you're still here, Dr. Lee, and hopefully our viewers are we're hanging on to talk some more. Now we were just talking about how people will see certain things in policing that other people don't normally see, and life is tough enough as it is. And I believe you were in the middle of commenting on something when we lost you. Did
I did keep talking, but I don't know at what point I cut out, so I'll just repeat myself. Just in terms of the types of things that emergency responders can see on the job, um, I think intellectually a lot of people understand, like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to see people who are hurt or are not doing well. But to be face to face with it, can have its toll over time. If you're not, aware of it, and if you're not able to really take care of yourself and get ahead of it, um, people are exposed even in a 12-hour shift. They might be exposed to more incidents than some people will see in a year, in terms of some of the bad things that they might witness that happen to people. Of course, we're all resilient, right? We're born resilient, and we can be very resilient. But if we're not dealing with that impact, when it's happening, or soon after it happens, it can start to build up, kind of like scar tissue, if again, if we're not aware of what's happening. So that's what I've seen, I think, over the years clinically, um, that kind of gets people in trouble eventually, is that they keep trying to push it down because no
yeah.
one wants to think about it. Whereas if they're processing and dealing with it as it comes up, they can stay very resilient.
A good friend of mine that I went to the academy with, Staff Sergeant John Hatch, he's detachment commander of Prince Edward County, shared with me an analogy that I believe his late father, who was also an OPP staff sergeant, had shared with him. It's the pebbles in the pocket. In every call that a police officer goes to, you take a little bit with you, whether it's something that you saw where someone was hurt or something that's weighed on your mind. It's like putting a little pebble in your pocket. And at the end of 30 years, your pockets get pretty full. And maybe you're carrying a knapsack full of pebbles and it's weighing you down. And it's slowing you down, not just at work, but it's slowing you down when you leave the office and in your personal life, with your children, with your partner, because you're carrying all that extra weight. And when he talked about mental health, he said, so now what we do once a week or once a month, we make sure to check on each other and say, hey, let's empty all our pebbles. We'll put them all on the table. We're going to talk about it, you know, and then we're going to leave them there, and we're going to go away. We're not going to take them with us. And I love the visual of that analogy, that yeah, you're leaving that load, that weight behind, because you could carry a lot,
Yeah,
you know.
I love that. I use something kind of similar. I picture like a big sponge, right? This is my compassion sponge. And every time I go, because of course, in emergency response, you get to do some very meaningful work and impact people in, very fundamental ways. So every time I go and there's maybe a situation that kind of weighs on me, it's like a drop of water in the sponge, right? My compassion
Mhm.
sponge. And then I go to another situation, drop of water, go to another, drop of water. And it's a big sponge, right? I'm resilient, I can absorb a lot. But if I'm not wringing out the sponge every once in a while, like, of course, eventually it'll get full. So what's important is resilience, and self-care is really just about how are you wringing out the sponge or emptying the backpack on a regular basis, right? And of course, what works for one person may look different for someone else. So it's knowing what works for you.
Well, and that's what I love about the variety that we have. So, what a nice segue to talk about Encompass. You're right, mental health support doesn't look the same for everybody. I know police officers that I work with that if they need to talk, they want to talk to another police officer. Somebody that's in uniform, carries a gun, they get me. You're like, I want to talk to another cop, they'll understand. Other officers, like me, I kind of want to keep it in house, but I don't necessarily want to share with the people I work with closely. But I kind of want to keep it in house. So Encompass is a beautiful way to have that, which is a program through the OPPA, which is our association. I'm going to throw you back the ball, so if you want to talk a bit more about Encompass.
Of course. So Encompass, so it's not an internal program in the OPP, as you said. It is administered by the association. So most members of the OPP are members of the association. So not all, but of course all uniform officers are. And so officers, association members and their families can all access Encompass. They have a 24/7 line where people can, get information or get support as needed. Because our association members, very few workplaces have this. Our members have unlimited benefits for treatment, right, with a psychologist or a master's level social worker. So because of those benefits, I can go through Encompass and get connected to someone fairly quickly. And of course, it's a giant province, and in some areas there may not be a therapist for many, many, many kilometers. And so, if needed, there can be virtual options as well. But either way, they're connecting you or your family member to a clinician quite quickly. And I think they have something similar to our care navigators in terms of care managers, I think they call them, in terms of helping people to navigate the different types of resources that might be suitable for them.
And I think it's great. I love that. I wanted to come back to that, so I'm glad you said it. The care navigators that we offer here in the OPP, when you think of it, somebody, you don't expect something to hit you a certain way, or you realize, wow, this is really bothering me, not sleeping well. How do you get that ball rolling? A lot of people don't know how to start. What do I need to do? So I think it's a really neat thing that we have care navigators, someone that will kind of walk you through it. Maybe tell us a bit I call you, you're a care navigator. How do you help me?
So it's helping people kind of figure out what might be the appropriate avenue or avenues for them at that time. Because you're right, people will often call and say, "I'm not doing well, but I don't know. I don't know what I need to do," right? And so having that conversation and providing a bit of support, they might help them figure out that, actually, I think I want to talk to a clinician, or actually, I think I want to talk to another officer, who's had a similar experience. Or we also have chaplains, so non-denominational, so even they're spiritual, but not coming with specific religious angles. So it might be that they're going through a spiritual journey, and it might be helpful to talk to one of our chaplains. So it's really about helping them figure it out. Are they okay with internal? Should they go external? Is this something that's maybe more clinically related or not? Um, or they may call for something not related at all to their job. I mean, we certainly have people call and say, "I'm worried about my kid. I think they might be struggling with an eating disorder. I don't know where to start." And the care navigator might help them find some resources in their community for their specific family's issues.
Okay, so as a first point of contact, it's a great way to, I'm thinking as you're talking about it, it's similar to a travel agent. I know I want to go on a trip, so I'm going to walk in, a travel agent's going to tell me, here's all your options, here's what we can offer. There's cruisers, there's flights so the navigator will really walk the member or their family member through each step, each option. And now, does the navigator stay with the person throughout the whole process?
It really depends on the individual situation, right? So it might be that someone wants to talk to a clinician in the community, they don't want to go internal, which is a-okay. And so care navigator may check in occasionally just to make sure that they're getting the supports and services they need. If they're kind of going in-house and maybe starting to work with one of our clinicians, typically the care navigator might step back because now they have the clinician to work with. It really depends on what the member wants and what makes sense for the situation.
So I think it's neat to have that option because it might be a connection. Maybe I'm thinking when you get connected with a navigator, there might be right away somewhat of a bond where you feel safe, comfortable with how the person's guiding you. So it's nice
I
to know
mean,
that option's there.
sometimes the care navigator is the first person that they've ever even opened up a little bit with, right? So to have that kind of trust, it's they can develop that relationship.
I'm having a hard time viewing our chat since the glitch, and I don't want to touch anything. But part of our team here, Victoria, just handed me a question that was on screen. Someone that was asking about how can I prepare for mental health before joining the OPP? So, Dr. Lee, what would be your advice? Somebody who's thinking of applying, knowing that this will have some challenges. What's some of the advice that you could give someone who's thinking of joining?
I I would suggest, if possible, going to see a clinician in your community. If you have access to that. But this is being proactive. And I know people often think about going to a clinician because they're really having a hard time or it's more reactive. But no, it can be proactive, right? Someone might go in and just kind of work through, is there anything I've been struggling with? Do I have a healthy way of thinking about things? Because sometimes people can fall into more of a black and white thinking, and that is something that is not going to be as helpful moving forward, well, in life, let alone the job. If there's any, past issues to deal with, let's work through it now, before we get knee deep into this career. I mean, if you think about professional sports, right, you look at, the NHL or NBA, you often see psychologists, and you certainly see coaches and physiotherapists who are very proactive in addition to reactive, right? Because it's not just about, I'm going to treat your injury after you get injured in the rink, right? It's also I want to help you enhance your performance, right? Anything getting in the way of your maximum performance, let's work through that. Let's deal with that now, so that you have a lot more awareness moving forward. So I would certainly think about meeting with a clinician in the community, as well as having a look at what are some of the things that help you keep healthy during stressful times, right? So for some people it's a lot of physical activity, for other people it's a lot of social, I need to see my loved ones and close friends, very often. Others it's more spiritual, church, meditation, etc. So really just taking a step back, and it's being proactive, thinking ahead. How can I prepare for this? What will help me work through some of the cobwebs that might be in there before I get in here?
Definitely. It's like preventive medicine. I
Absolutely.
know in the canine unit, a lot of the handlers would go see a chiropractor. And so I did the same. And the chiropractor had told me, he says, this is good preventive. If anything goes out of whack, we see it, we just check. So basically, be ready in case something happens. And it's a great way to see where you're at, to have a baseline. So that's great advice for somebody to, if you don't have somebody that you speak to. And I would imagine too that your family and the people close to you could probably help you prepare that way and say, well, you know what? Yeah, here's one thing I see that might bother you. Or so great preventive medicine. Uh,
And bringing up family and preventive medicine, I would argue that this extends to the family as well as developing some kind of communication plan or strategies. So what I mean by that is, when I was doing, before I came to the BPO, I was doing all clinical work. I would do this, let's establish a baseline, it's kind of like wellness checkup, etc. And when they were okay with it, I would bring in their family member, right? It could be a spouse, it could be a parent, sibling, a close friend. But we talk about, here are some of the potential risks of the job, right? Which of course we can work with, but you need the self-awareness and you need your supports, right? So in terms of, hey, what are some early signs that you or your loved one maybe isn't doing so well? How can you guys have that conversation early on, rather than things building up and things becoming a much bigger problem?
I love the way you explain that. It seems it's common sense. You need the right tools. So for us to be police officers, we have a tool belt, and we have tools that give us options so that we can do our job. And it's the same thing with this. You need the right tools as a family. How we know that this is what's coming. You're thinking of this career as a family. How are we going to equip ourselves, prepare ourselves, and have the right tools in place so that we can do this successfully?
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful way to portray that. That's going to bring me to the tool you briefly mentioned just, I think, before we had our glitch, the Family Wellness Resource Guide. I know that people can look at that at opp.ca. Can you tell me a bit more about that guide, what it entails?
So it's really a great. It's kind of like you have the Wikipedia, which can provide some information and then direct you. Then you know where to kind of look if you want more information about certain things. Um, so it essentially it talks about the different benefits that different members might have and how to access those. So it really helps break that down, because between having Healthy Workplace Team, having Encompass, and of course we have our Employee Family Assistance Program, which is now, the provider is now TELUS. People can obviously get very, very overwhelmed with which is the proper way to go. So it gives some information about each of those and the different resources available through them. but also there's some great information in there in terms of how to talk to your kids, if something is happening, or if your family might be relocating, because there's great opportunities in the OPP, but it often means someone might have to move. What's involved in relocation, what are some of the supports in the OPP. So it really, I think, helps just kind of lay out, where do I start, where do I find more information about these specific things.
And you mentioned that this guide is given in hard copy to every new recruit that's graduating.
I believe if it's not, that's the plan. I think there was a paper shortage earlier this year. So I know
Okay.
corporate communications did a great job. They developed just little magnets with a QR code, which is wonderful, because
Oh,
you can stick it to the fridge and then just forget about it until you might need it, which also links directly to the online guide. But I think the paper copy, I think, is the plan moving forward, handing that out to families.
I love how we are using QR codes now. I'm not very tech savvy. I always say if it beeps, I'm not so good with it. If it barks, not too bad. But the QR code, great idea. We use that in recruitment also. Where I used to lug around when I'd go to a college, a huge bin of booklets, whereas now I bring a poster with a QR code. And it seems that the generation of today, they like to operate that way. A lot of them don't want to have a book, but it's easy to just scan a QR code with your phone. I want to remind everybody again to visit opp.ca. You'll find a lot of the information that Dr. Lee is talking about at opp.ca/careers. You'll find a lot of other information about recruitment and all the supports that we have. You mentioned briefly EAP, and I often say when I talk about mental health support, it comes in different flavors because we're all different. So it's so nice that we have different flavors available. For some people, it might be Encompass. Somebody else, it might be the way the wellness team program works. For other people, they might say, you know what, I want to be completely outside. We have this program with the Ontario government, the Employee Assistance Program. And it caters to the different personalities, the difference in how we handle and want to deal with whatever it is that we're facing.
Absolutely.
Um,
And our EFAP, for example, just last week I learned, which I didn't realize, that they can help with finding daycare in your area, right? And so there's some unique resources available throughout each of the different programs. So yeah, I mean, the guide is a great way to kind of look up what are some of these different benefits, because I mean, some of them I'm still learning about.
Absolutely. I think every day I learn about something new that we have in the OPP, whether it's a new unit, a new resource available. We talk about the connections page. I'm guilty of not going on OPP connections often. OPP officers have access to a page, I'm going to say a page called OPP Connections, which outlines a whole lot of stuff that's out there for us to assist us in doing our job. I don't, again, I don't see a lot of the stuff coming up in the chat. So if there's any more pending good questions, I'm sure Victoria will hand them to me. As we get ready to wrap up, I would say, where where would you suggest somebody starts? If I'm thinking, you had mentioned going to see a psychologist. Is this something I should do maybe before I even fill out an application? What if you had to your last words of advice? What would you say?
I mean, I'm a psychologist, so I'm always going to suggest going to talk to a psychologist. Um, I mean, I think it's great even just for personal growth, right? And if you're going to be spending all this time and energy and resources into applying, because obviously it's quite a process to apply to the police services, and then to get in, and then to do all the training. Just get a checkup, right? Just to see how you're doing. I think Toronto Fire Chief Matthew Pegg, I think he's retiring, but he goes to a psychologist twice a year, and he's very open about this on social media. But one thing he said was, he said, going is like getting your blood drawn and analyzed, right? So essentially, I can look at my blood, and I can't see if it's healthy or if there's abnormalities. But what you're doing is you get your blood drawn. You have specialists, who are analyzing your blood, who can see things that maybe you don't necessarily see, right? And so it's that kind of idea. I mean, you may go, and at worst you have a pleasant conversation and you're validated in terms of how well you're doing.
That's a
Um,
great analogy, and I love speaking in analogy. So I'm reading your mail on that. That's a great way to explain it. Last question I'll ask you that came up in the chat: is there any good habits that somebody could you would recommend to prepare mentally before applying to the OPP. So we talk about going to see psychologists. I would definitely say fitness would be. Any other good habits that you would suggest that someone should look at in preparation?
I'll say three kind of major ones to me is looking at how you deal with stressful situations. Because again, many of us try to avoid things that are not pleasant because they're unpleasant. But you need to be able to deal with things proactively as they're coming up. So, what would be helpful for you to deal with situations as they come up? Having a trusted person to talk to, or some other kind of healthy outlet. The other I would talk about, which will sound like it's a contradiction to going into policing, is as much of a self-care routine as possible. Now, of course, people say, Vivian, that's insane because, there's shift work and, all kinds of other things that get in the way, which is absolutely true. But if you know, for example, that you need 3 hours of cardio every week, if you know, for example, that you have to set time for a half hour catch up with your best friend every week, whatever it is, even though the schedule in terms of day to day may look different, it's you're keeping up those things because those things are important to you and they're going to keep you healthy. So yeah, so the look at how you're processing things, the self-care routine as much as possible. And I know we talked about the communication piece, right? Learning to be able to just talk about when someone's not doing well, when you're not doing well with your close loved ones, and vice versa, right? So that you can continue to support each other instead of dealing with things eventually in silos.
That is great advice. Life will change dramatically when you join policing. You get busy, the academy, all that, but don't lose that plan, what you just mentioned. Whatever your three key things are, write them down and make sure that you still make those part of your life when you're at the academy, when you're home on the weekend, and especially when you start on the job.
Absolutely.
Dr. Lee, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for all the information. We could probably talk for a few hours. You're an encyclopedia of information. It reassures me and it gives me great comfort to know that you're at the helm and that we have someone like you on our team. It's a pleasure to have met you. And like I said, it really does reassure me that we're in good hands. Thank you for what you do for our members. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being that sponge for us as we learn to walk with mental health and as we grow and we become a better organization. It's because of things like this and the programs that you offer, that you oversee. That's what makes the OPP unique. That's what makes us a police service of excellence because we care about our people. And I know that our association goes hand in hand with that. They care about our people, and it's really reassuring. And I hope that everyone that was watching sees how the OPP is engaging with mental health and how to look after our team. That's why we're one of the best police organizations in North America. I would argue the best, but
Of
I
course.
say one of the best. I want to remind everybody one last time, opp.ca is the place to go. If you're thinking of applying, if you want to read some more about what we talked about with Dr. Lee, you want to see this resource guide, go look at it. There's also an email with uniform recruitment. If you have some questions, I'd encourage you to follow us on social media. Put us on your Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it is whatever platform you use, and follow us. So there's always good updates. The next AMA will be in a few weeks. It'll be advertised not too far from now. I want to remind everybody there's an information session Monday, May 27th. I will be doing an information session here at General Headquarters at 6 o'clock. You can sign up for that. It's free online at opp.ca. Dr. Lee, I want to give you one final word to wrap up with your goodbye also. Whatever you want to say, the floor is yours.
Essentially, the policing can be such a rewarding career. There's so much meaning in the work. You can absolutely, make such a difference in people's lives. But of course, there is the flip side, which it does not mean everyone's going to develop PTSD. It does not mean that everyone's going to develop problems. As long as you're staying on top of your health, right? Get ahead of it, develop healthy habits, develop a relationship with someone that you can process with, whether it's a good friend, whether it's a clinician, whoever. There is so much meaning in this work, but there are some difficult things in this work, and you can absolutely thrive in this career. Just get ahead of your health.
Well, you heard it right from the doctor. This is a great place to be. The supports are here. We will help you prepare. We hope that you'll visit opp.ca. We want to see you on our team. We are recruiting, we're hiring. Dr. Lee, a big thank you once again. Thank you to all our viewers that joined us. Please follow us on social media, and we will